just so pissed at myself right now. I recorded 50 minutes of content and I realized that my camera was facing the other way. I hate myself so much right now because I have to repeat everything.
Anyway, hi guys, it's Molly. I am currently not in Malaysia. I'm somewhere nearby Washington DC and I'll be spending the next couple of months here. So yeah, you'll see this background a lot for these next few months. But yeah, so if you've noticed, I have not been doing wrap-up videos lately, and that's because first of all, I've been busy. Second, I haven't even been reading that much. So yeah, I'll be wrapping up all the books that I read between January and May. Yeah, let's get started. The first book that I read this year was Milk and Honey by ACOWAR. This is a poetry book and I really quite enjoyed it. I rated it a 4 out of 5 stars. Do you think that it was a little bit overrated? Everyone was saying it was just so good and everything, but when I read it, there were some poems that I really liked, but there were others that I couldn't really relate to, or I thought it was a little bit too dramatic and things. But overall, I thought it was quite beautiful and very honest and intimate as well. And yeah, I quite enjoyed it. Next, I read Scythe by Neil Schusterman. Neil Schusterman is the author of the Unwind Dystology, which is a series I've been talking about a lot in my videos. So Scythe is his new series, and this one's basically set in a futuristic dystopian world where humans have basically figured out how to live forever. So they've mastered immortality and everything. But the one thing that they haven't figured out how to do is how to control the population without, killing people. So in this future, basically, there's a community of scythes who have to kill off people at random in order to, control the population. And this is totally fine in those days. I absolutely loved the concept of the book, and I thought that the plot overall was really, really great. I had a problem with the writing a bit, and the first half of the story was just really, really slow for me, but the second half was just so good, and overall I enjoyed it. I rated it a 4 out of 5 stars. Next, I read The Kite Runner by Khaled Hosseini. I quite enjoyed this one as well. I rated it 4.5 out of 5 stars. I don't think it was as good as his second book, which is 1,000 Splendid Suns, and I adore that book a lot. I loved it so much. This one, I think, of course it deals with different kinds of issues, and it was quite emotional as well. I do remember that my heart broke in some of the chapters, and it's a really, really great book, and I understand why a lot of people really like it. So yeah, I'd recommend it as well. The next book that I read was Black Moon by Romina Russell. This is the third book in the Zodiac series, and unfortunately, I was actually quite disappointed with this one. I rated it at 3.5 out of 5 stars. I really enjoyed the first 2 books. They were like 4.5 stars for me. But for some reason, maybe I read this book at the wrong time, but everything felt really off for me. Like the characters and the plot and the writing. I don't know, it just felt really off. Maybe it's because it was a while since I read the first 2 books. I really hope that the 4th book is going to be a lot better, because first of all, the cover is gorgeous and it's going to be the last book in the series, so I do hope that it was worth it, investing in this series. The next book that I read was Quintana of Sharon by Melina Marqueta. This is the 3rd book in the Lumiere Chronicles. Now, I absolutely loved the 2nd book in the series. It made it to my top 5 of last year. And this one was actually really, really great as well. It was a really wonderful conclusion to the trilogy. I don't think it was as good as the 2nd book, but it was a lot of really, really cool plot twists, and her writing was beautiful. So overall, I really did enjoy it as well. So yeah, I would definitely recommend this trilogy to everyone who loves reading high fantasy. It's one of my favorites, I'd say, and yeah, it's really great. The next book I read was Caravel by Stephanie Garber. I unfortunately did not like this book at all. I rated it 3.5 out of 5 stars. I had trouble getting into the book. I didn't like the writing. The concept was good initially, but I don't think the author executed it up to its potential. The plot was just weird for me. I don't know, and I didn't like the characters. I just had a lot of problems with this book, and it's sad because this book was just so hyped up and the cover is just beautiful. But yeah, maybe it's just not my cup of tea. Maybe I was reading it when I was just not in the mood, but yeah, unfortunately I did not like Caraval. The next book I read was Girl Against the Universe, and this one is a really light contemporary book that sort of focuses on a mental illness that I haven't really read before in young adults, and it's PTSD, which is post-traumatic stress disorder. It was really interesting because I take psychology. There were a lot of psychology references inside the book that I understood, and I'm like, oh my god, I understand what that means and everything. So I really quite enjoyed this book. I thought that it wasn't like a really heavy take on mental illness. I think I rated it around 4 stars, so yeah, I'd recommend that one. So the next book that I read was A Darker Shade of Magic by V.E. Schwab. I really enjoyed this book. I thought that it was really fast-paced from the start of the book up until the end. I really enjoyed V.E. Schwab's writing. I loved the characters that she introduced. I rated A Darker Shade of Magic 4.5 stars out of 5 stars. Really enjoyed it. I love that it was about alternate universes, different to the Firebird trilogy, which I love. This one's set in like its own fantasy world with alternate Londons, and it's just so cool. And I especially love Red London. I would like live there if I could, and it had a lot of magic in it. It's just so cool. And yeah. The next book that I read was actually a reread, and that was of P.S. I Still Love You by Jenny Han, which is the second book in the To All the Boys I've Loved Before trilogy.
Oh my god, the titles are so long.
So yeah, I was getting ready to read the final book in the series, so I reread the second one. I skipped the first one because I don't know, I didn't like Peter Kavinsky anymore, and I fell in love with John Ambrose McLaren again when I reread the second book, and I just really had a lot of fun rereading it. It was just so cute and gushy, and it was exactly what I needed at that time. So right after that reread, I read the third book, which is Always and Forever, La Regine. I was supposed to be like studying for exams this time, but I'm like, you know what, F it, I'm gonna read it. And I read it in like 7 hours, and I adored the third book so much. I loved it a lot. I thought it was a really beautiful conclusion to La Regine's story, and I actually made a review video for this, so you can check that out. I'll link it in the description box below. Next, I was going through a sort of bad time, so I wanted to read like poetry books, so I read The Princess Saves Herself in this one, and I don't think I enjoyed that one that much. I rated it like 3.5 stars. But then I read Your Soul is a River by Nikita Jill, and I really liked that one. I rated it like 4 or 4.5 stars. And I thought that one was quite life-changing, and it really sort of helped me get through what I was going through. It's a really beautiful poetry book, and I'd highly recommend if you like to read like healing poetry books, that kind of thing. So yeah. Next, I read A Gathering of Shadows, which is the second book in the Shades of Magic trilogy. I didn't enjoy it as much as I enjoyed the first book, but that was because I thought the second book was really slow. I could not get into the first 300 pages. It took me a while, I guess, but the last 150 pages was just so freaking entertaining. I loved it a lot, and overall I thought it was really good. I rated it slightly lower than the first book, around 4.4 stars, and I'm definitely going to be reading the last book, which I did bring with me, so I'll get around to that soon. Okay, so the next book that I read was A Court of Wings and Ruin. I never know what the acronyms are for anymore. I really enjoyed it. I rated it about 4.5 stars out of 5 stars. I do think that the second book was the best in the trilogy, but the final book was definitely a great conclusion to Feyre's story, and I am quite excited to read more from this series. I also made a review video for this book if you want to check that one out as well. Alright, so the final book that I read in May was Defy the Stars by Claudia Gray. I really enjoyed this one actually. So you know that I love Claudia Gray. She wrote one of my favorite trilogies, which is the Firebird trilogy, and this is another science fiction book, but it's like more heavy on the science fiction side. It's more about those outer space adventures and things, and I loved it a lot. I rated it 4.5 stars. It made me think a lot about like philosophical questions and questions about morality and humanity and everything, and I really like books that can, you know, let me think about those things. So I really enjoyed Defy the Stars, and I also like that Claudia Gray sort of talked about religion in this one, but in a really neutral way that makes you sort of think about it. So yeah, I love that a lot. So yeah guys, those are all the books that I read between January and May. There were only 15 books. I am quite disappointed in myself. Hopefully I'll be reading more for these next few months and I'll post more videos. And yeah, thank you so much for watching. Comment down below if you've read any of these books that I read and whether you enjoyed it or not, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye!